I was on a date with a girl that revealed that she was a Satanist and I'm pretty sure she had sacrificed a goat. What's the worst date you have ever been on Reddit? My worst date was with a girl who thought that Islam was a country that she wanted to go to. Her head was so full of air that when we left the restaurant and she invited me back to hers, I started to make excuses why I couldn't stay. She was so persistent that in the end I lied that I was a Christian and basically said that I thought that it'd be inappropriate to go back to hers. TL. DR went on date with stupid girl and said I was a Christian to avoid sex. I invited a nice looking boy to my house to meet my parents. I was pretty serious. He was a very nice guy as he was really nice to my soft in the head younger brother. People usually don't even give him the time of day, but I knew this particular person was a nice person because he seemed particularly aware of my brother. I live in a remote part of the woods as my family is very poor and they are rather religious people, trading commodity for scenery. So I brought him up to my room thinking we would probably get it on, but he was rather shy and kept looking at all the walls in my room. Which was odd since there really wasn't anything in them. My mother invited him to dinner but he declined. Even though we brought out our best goat. He seemed reluctant to partake. Anyway, what was really awkward was when we dropped him off to the bus stop and he kept giving me glances, so I knew he was into me, but once on the bus he said, "You will never see me again." I found that to be very awkward, as I have been remotely watching over him by ritual and still do in fact. From time to time. TL. Doctor invited a stranger to my home. Invited him to dinner. Expected to get laid but he left on a sour note without any explanation. I can tell you about someone else's worst date because I'm pretty sure I managed to create it for her. Back in my early college days I was still trying to figure out social relationships. I was severely socially stunted and quite childlike. So, on AOL I found a random girl to chat with and she seemed cool. Things progressed to phone calls. Finally, I asked her out to see a movie. Here's where I went so wrong. The movie I chose was The Cell. I had actually seen it before and I'm pretty sure somewhere during the course of watching it she probably thought I was a murderer. I don't know what possessed me to take a socially awkward girl like her to this movie. To this day, I still regret it. She never did chat with me again after that. Too bad too. Cause she was cute. TL. DR. You never go full creepy on a random internet date. I've mentioned this one other time, but I once went on a date with a guy, and while we were driving to dinner we got a speeding ticket. He asked me to pay for the ticket because I was distracting him, and that took me to dinner where he made me foot the bill. After that he took me to a nightclub where he told me about other girls he brought there. I then made him take me home and told him to forget my number. I went to dinner recently and she came back to smoke afterwards. I had full intention of kissing her, but when we got into my room I didn't close the door behind us and felt weird about getting up once we were sitting because I didn't want it to come off as let's FCK now. Also my roommate was in the living room and could hear us joking around and would let out the odd chuckle, making me super self-conscious. At one point I decided to make the jump but was so in my head that I only half jumped. What I mean is, when we hit a lull, I put my arm around her and instead of kissing her, just leaned us both back so we were laying down. That's it. I just laid there awkwardly for a few minutes until she said she had to go. Never saw her again, haha. I don't think I've ever had a disastrous enough date, but I did get sexually harassed by a petite and extremely flamboyant gay young man at a New Year's party. I was tripping on 3 hits of pretty good acid and it was quite a task to get him to stop trying to get his hands up into my ripped jeans and to convince him that I was under no circumstances going to step outside to make out with him. I later gathered it was his first time rolling. This was the first work party I attended for my current job. It is an intriguing place to spend my time. I went on a date with a cute Lebanese girl. She was really smart and cute. We would Skype etc and it all went fine. But I met her and she told me I had to meet her mom and say I was gay and she was helping find Jesus, since her parents won't let her date. Well, I met her parents with them thinking I'm gay. Nothing wrong with gays, by the way. Anyways, she decided she can't kiss or even hug until engaged, and I never needed a dictionary so bad in my life. I couldn't tell if the words were big or in a different language. There wasn't a second date. You know, some people eat goat. It's no big thing. What made you think it was a goat sacrificed to Satan? You know, the rest of the family was Satanist as well. Because the only people that are Satanist are the bored rich people with poor social skills or teens being resentful to their parents. Satanism should really be called adolescent behavior or childishness. It was the summer after I graduated from high school, and I agreed to go on a date with a recent college grad in his mid-20s. He picked me up and drove me from the suburbs to a nearby train station, and we took the train to Philly. We wandered around Center City a bit, but I immediately caught on that maybe someone that was 24/25 was a bit out of my realm of maturity. Especially since I think my longest relationship at that point had lasted 2 weeks. He tried to lose me in a bookstore, but goddammit, this was before smartphones, and I had no way of getting home. I couldn't be stranded in Philadelphia. I didn't know how to get back home, and it was night. Even though I knew what was going through his head, I followed his ass so he couldn't shake me. The least he could do was be a gentleman and drive me home. He relented, and we walked back to the subway, and he started rattling off great gems such as, "Photography is a lie," and I'm the liar, along with "I always like to sit on the front of the train so I can see the tracks." One time a little kid was in the seat and I shoved him aside and told him to FCK off. Double quote. So I went out with this girl as a junior in high school. She'd been leading me on and was driven by a sexual desire. Being a 17-year-old male, I too was driven by this desire. Turns out she was bisexual, was molested when she was 7, lost her virginity when she was 13, and somehow had a labia piercing. She told me she was in love with me within the first hour of our meeting. She was 15. However, she did have 34 Ds and to this day were the greatest boobs I have as the pleasure of playing with. So I thank you, crazy BTCH, for letting me play with your bongos. I went on a date one time with a guy I thought was pretty cool. I knew him from my community college. We usually just sat and talked in the honors lounge. He was awkward, but in the fun kind of way. While on this date, he told me of a game he liked to play with his friends. Spoons. Basically, you throw spoons at black people while in a moving vehicle. If you don't hit the person, you have to pull over and retrieve the spoon. Couldn't believe my ears. Definitely didn't see that one coming. I was so appalled and embarrassed. I didn't say much the rest of the date and I ignored his texts afterward asking me to come over for pancakes. Lols. I ended up dropping out of school because he was one of my only friends there and I felt sick even thinking about seeing him. But 'tis all good because I started dating the love of my life not soon after. TLDR. Spoons is not a cool game, brothers. It will not make me want your racist pancakes. Worst date of my life was when I met this saxophone jazz player chick, and she suggested we go to her open mic jazz club. She had huge breasts and I was young and HRNY, so I said cool, and picked her up in my smart car. I know Balin. She took like 30 minutes to get to my car, and when she did she brought her oversized saxophone, which she told me nothing about, case in my tiny little smart car, and since there was no room I had to open our windows and have it sticking out both our windows. Really awkward. I ask her for directions and she tells me it's far away. It took 45 minutes to get there. As soon as we got there she's all ecstatic cause apparently some big hotshot sax player was there. So after he's done it was time for open mic. After an hour she goes and plays for a good 3 hours and leaves me sitting there. I'm bored as FCK. After she's done she gets hammered in a matter of 30 minutes and walks away. I don't see her for the rest of the night and it's around 1 AM, so I go and try to find her. I literally couldn't find her anywhere. I asked one of the waitresses to call her name in the girls' bathroom and there was no Charlene. Eventually after another 30 minutes of looking, One of the waiters says he saw her leave with that big hotshot guy and get into a cab. Weird thing is she left her sacks with me and her oversized case. Me being the young hothead drunk kid I was. Goes outside with it and gives it to the first homeless man I see and tell him happily to go pawn it for some drug money and gladly get the FCK out. Sorry for the long story, hope you enjoyed. Close bracket. This will be buried. But my worst date was a guy I met online. I mentioned I had never had pho before, so he said I should try it out. And we went to a pho place. We sit down. Make some small talk. And he walks me through the menu. The first question out of his mouth was asking if I was Jewish. Understandable because I mentioned that I can't eat shellfish or pork, but I didn't mention it was due to allergies and preference. So he assumed I was keeping kosher. The next thing he decides to bring up is that he is not gay, but instead straight and wanted to see what a date with another guy would be like. Finally he goes for the hat trick and says that he doesn't think gay people should want to be able to get married because it is just the government interfering with our lives. So all in the same date the guy decides to say that this was only for his ego. I also still think he was a little closeted because he wanted a blowjob after, and that I didn't deserve equal marriage rights. Needless to say, at the end of the date when he asked for the beach I told him he was a self-absorbed and walked back to the bus stop. I met this guy online. His wife had supposedly died of cancer and he had 2 kids. He lived several states away. He seemed pretty perfect. After a few months, he drives out so we can meet in person. We meet up in the parking lot of a cheap hotel kind of late at night because I had to work and he had to get his kids settled after arriving in town. I follow him to his room and right before we get there I realize that I really know nothing about this guy and he could have lied to me about having his kids in the room. I say so and he laughs kind of creepy. Then he opened the door and there were 2 small children in there. 3 months later we got married. 4 years later we have 2 more kids and he continues to seem pretty perfect. However, I am of course still waiting for him to murder me because there's just no way that story above ends well. To be honest, it seems like an interesting person to date. Regular dates are so generic and boring. Either A, you end up having sex. B, she ends up not liking you. Or C, you guys are still friends and she wants to take it slow, with very little variation in between. I don't know what made you meet someone secluded from everyone else and then follow her into the forest. It had been your fault for your naivety if you ended up dead. But instead you found an emotionally troubled girl with a strange hobby. She didn't try to kill you or anything. If she did, no one would have known about it. And I mean no one. Imagine if they were cannibals. They could have eaten you and dissolved the bones and whatever was left and you'd never have been seen again. Instead, she genuinely tried to connect with you. But she failed to do so and ended up losing you. She should have told you about her hobby and religion and even her family. But then again, if she did, you wouldn't have bothered meeting her in the first place. I was sitting in a hot tub. It was about the 3rd or 4th time I hung out with this girl. Everything was going great and we were making great conversation. I was really getting to know her. Out of nowhere she says, I want to let you something I haven't told anyone. I say okay and she drops this on me. When I was 6, my best friend and I were having fun in a hot tub. We were doing handstands just being kids. Well, she got her hair stuck in the bottom vent and drowned. I tried to pull her out but I was too young and weak. So I ran to get my parents. They couldn't get her out. But the paramedics got her free by cutting off some of her hair. I was shocked and didn't have any idea what to say. I told her I was sorry that happened and asked if she wanted to get out of the hot tub. She wanted to stay in. After an hour or so we had sex in the hot tub. I still don't understand how you can't pull someone out of a hot tub in a life or death situation like that. But then again, what do I know about hot tub vents? I got set up on a blind date to a homecoming event dance in college. She was pretty cute and I was looking forward to a fun night. To give you a better understanding of the situation, I went to a religious college that is owned by a church, so all school sponsored events are kept pretty clean, including music played at events. Not 5 minutes after we had got there she starts complaining about how inappropriate the music they were playing was. It was just some pop song that was popular at the time. From there it just went downhill. From the music they were playing at the event, to how all media today is filth, how her roommates were horrible people, etc. All within about the first hour of the date. Thankfully, sadly, I had experience in handling crazy and skillfully cut down the length of the date drastically. Kind of easy when she thinks everything is evil. Next semester I meet a new friend and find out she was one of the girl's roommates and moved out. Crazy girl would yell at them constantly for watching TV because everything on it was evil and made her feel bad. On several occasions she had turned it off while they were watching it because she didn't approve of what was on. She went on to meet a guy online, fly out to visit him after a week, get engaged, and marry him a month later. Homecoming formal my junior year. My first dance ever. My date picks me up 30 minutes late. Realizes he isn't wearing a tie or appropriate S. Stops at the store. Steals a tie and some S. Because apparently he really felt like he was F-king the man. Forgets that he never made dinner reservations. We end up eating a $50 meal. He got steak. I got a salad. Forgets his CR. I once talked to a girl online for some time. She was really smart, quirky, funny and pretty cute. I enjoyed the conversation and thought I was in for a treat. When I saw her for the first time I learned she had no arms. And that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't know how to react. How the FCK did you see pictures of her? You said she was pretty cute and not see that she was missing some appendages. Granted it could have been face pictures. But then how did A, she operate the camera and B, communicate with you online in the first place? I posted this before. Here is my story. Went on a blind date with a girl who claimed she had lost 100 pounds. I found it. It was in her ass. I decided not to judge and just have a good time. I am a large person myself. After about 30 minutes of dancing and drinks at her favorite club, I was getting lots of dirty looks from a club rat in a white suite. Her friends kept saying things on the order of "I'm glad you two are together. You two deserve a good relationship. And you are so much nicer than her last boyfriend." I asked the last friend to point him out. Of course it's white suit Danny Terrio over there. I realized I was being used to make this pose jealous. I looked my date straight in the eye and said, "I'll see you sometime. I have to take a sh-tea." I then walked out the door and never saw her again. In college at the beginning of freshman year, me and a friend took a couple girls out to some parties. These girls seemed to be really into us. And we were getting hammered, so things looked great. At one point, we're passing around a bottle of vodka, taking swigs. After, I dunno, the 6th or 7th swig in about 5 minutes, I projectile vomit on both the women. Before anyone really knows what happened, I turn around, beeline it for the door, and walk back to the other side of campus without my shirt on. I had to take it off cause it was covered in puke. A lot of people taunted me on the way about it. When I got back, me and my roommate played Guitar Hero for a bit. And then I passed out. Good times.